Welcome to the Industry Experts Panel at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com. My name is Michelle Holliday. This is one of our most important cryptocurrency interviews of the year. Many of the topics that our guest will be discussing today will be the ones that will be grabbing the headlines in 2018. Make sure that you download our free exclusive report that our founder of Portfolio Wealth Global, Tom Beck, has prepared on the top currency to watch right now. It is up 400% in the past 3 weeks. Go to PortfolioWealthGlobal.com/2018. Also, download the complete tutorial kit at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com/rocket. Our guest today is Roger Ver, a cryptocurrency expert. In 2011, his company MemoryDealers.com became the first mainstream website to accept Bitcoin as payment. Roger then went on to create BitcoinStore.com, the first website in the world to accept Bitcoin as payment for hundreds of thousands of items, creating the standard for the future wave of merchant adoption. He also became the first person in the world to invest in Bitcoin startups, funding the first generation of Bitcoin businesses. Roger, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you, Michelle. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start off with a topic of scaling challenges that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and virtually every other major cryptocurrency is facing right now. Can you describe the problem with the amount of transactions per second that Bitcoin and Ethereum can process versus traditional transactions such as Visa or MasterCard, and what this could mean for the future of cryptocurrencies going forward?
There's two different reasons for scaling difficulties. So Ethereum has so many people starting to use it around the world for all sorts of things, and they have a development team that wants to scale it so that as many people around the world as possible are able to use it for all these different things, and they've been scaling very, very quickly. Bitcoin Core has a bit of a different problem. Bitcoin Core has a development team that openly say that they want Bitcoin Core to have high fees. They openly say that they want it to have full blocks, and they openly say that they want it to have the unreliable transactions that come along with full blocks. So that's why today the average price of a Bitcoin Core transaction is somewhere around $40 in fees. Well, people aren't going to be using that sort of thing. So that's why I'm a big fan of some of these other cryptocurrencies that have development teams that actively and openly want it to scale so that people all over the world can use it. And two of the best examples of that are both Ethereum and Bitcoin Cash. Both of their teams want it to scale for the whole world to be able to use.
Now, Roger, recently you announced that your faith is with Bitcoin Cash. Coinbase just added it to their platform, and it is up big. What are the milestones for 2018?
So the big milestones, I think, are building the underlying fundamentals to make the currency useful. So with Bitcoin Core, it's slow, expensive, and unreliable. Bitcoin Cash is fast, cheap, and reliable. And with Bitcoin Cash, we now have blockchain.info offering full support. Just earlier this week, Coinbase began offering full support. And just at the beginning of this week or the end of last week, BitPay, the number one merchant processor for Bitcoin transactions, have announced that they have full support for Bitcoin Cash coming on the way. So once all three of those businesses have that up and running, I think we're going to see a real giant mass migration of users away from Bitcoin Core and to Bitcoin Cash. And we've already seen that. Bitcoin Cash is up significantly more than Bitcoin Core over the last few months. And I'm sure that's going to continue because the fundamentals of Bitcoin Cash are so much stronger than the fundamentals of Bitcoin Core. And just to repeat one more time, if you have two versions of Bitcoin, one that's fast, cheap, and reliable, and another that's slow, expensive, and unreliable, it's clear which one of those two versions people are going to start to use, and that's Bitcoin Cash.
I think so. Now, Roger, just briefly, could you tell us a little bit about your own background and how you became so knowledgeable about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Silicon Valley and have been around computers my entire life. And then starting around junior high school age, my hobby became studying economics. And if you think about it, Bitcoin is a convergence of those exact two things, computer science and economics. So when I heard about Bitcoin for the first time, I could understand the computer science aspect of how it was this decentralized network that couldn't be shut down or controlled or stopped. And I understood the economic aspects that made me realize that people are going to start using this as money. I was sure they were going to start using it as money. There was no doubt in my mind. I knew people were going to start using Bitcoin as money. So my first step was to buy some Bitcoin, and my next step was to start investing in the businesses to build the tools and the infrastructure to make Bitcoin useful or easy for people to use as money around the world. And now it's become this worldwide phenomenon that it is today. And as I mentioned, that version of Bitcoin split into two versions of Bitcoin earlier this year on August 1st, Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Core. Bitcoin Cash clearly is the version of Bitcoin that I signed up for and got involved and fell in love with, whereas Bitcoin Core is something completely different. And I'm not optimistic on the future of Bitcoin Core at all at this point.
Oh, wow. Now, is there an inherent challenge for all pre-programmed coins once they hit their max coin capacity in terms of incentivizing the miners to keep the blockchain running? In other words, once Bitcoin hits 21 million, what will incentivize the network?
Well, the lucky part about that question is that we have more than 100 years until all of the Bitcoins have been mined. So we have over 100 years, almost 120 years to solve that problem. And the idea at the moment, the present thinking, is that the network fees will just pick up the slack for the missing block reward in 120 years from now. But the idea is that you'll have, ideally everybody on the planet using Bitcoin. So even if everybody's paying just a fraction of a penny in fees, the amount of fees per block will still be huge. So I don't think that's a problem at all. And even if it is a problem, we have more than 100 years to solve that. Whereas the Bitcoin Core team, they're worried about that problem today, and they've actively damaged Bitcoin Core to try to solve that problem that won't even be a problem for 100 years from now. So they've created a problem today in an attempt to solve something that won't even actually be a problem until more than 100 years in the future. And from my point of view, that's a really short-sighted, mistaken thing to do.
Now, Roger, what sort of government regulations are coming in 2018? Obviously, the entire sector is employing tens of thousands of people and earning millions and billions of dollars. So governments will be looking to capture this capital via taxes or otherwise.
Yeah, so I suppose I have two answers for you. First, I'll give the philosophic answer. And the philosophic answer is I think that Bitcoin is a good thing because it enables the individual to have 100% complete control over their currency, regardless of what laws people living in a far-off land pass. I think that writing down words on a piece of paper and calling it a law doesn't alter morality one bit. And so the short philosophical answer is that I don't really care what the politicians do, and I'm not interested philosophically, and I'm opposed to the very idea of one group of people getting to boss everybody else around. The practical answer and the businessman answer in me is that businessmen love to know exactly what the rules of the games are going to be so that they can build their businesses around them with certainty and know what they are and aren't allowed to do. And so the fact that these laws are going to be made clear for everybody, it's going to make it so big businesses and small businesses alike can get involved in the space in a big way and operate without having to worry about what the politicians are going to decide next week. So the practical answer is hooray. The businesses are going to be able to get it in a much bigger way. The philosophical answer is that I think we should be opposed to the very idea that a small group of people get to boss everybody else around.
Now, Roger, has pure decentralization proven to be less effective than having a governance system in view of the Dash model versus the Bitcoin model, for example?
I think Dash has really shown the world a lot of different ways on how this can be done, and it can be something that can be looked at by other cryptocurrencies and perhaps adopted or even improved upon from there. So I'm a big fan of all of these different experiments that are happening out there, including Dash's governance model. The more power to these people. They're doing all these different things because that's how the entire world moves forward, is people try new things and we figure out what works and what doesn't, and then more and more people start using the things that do work.
Let's step into another important subject, the concentration of power within the blockchain world to the early comers and the savvy programmers. There are about 1,000 people controlling close to 40% of Bitcoin, and reportedly about 1,200 programmers capable of coding a blockchain worldwide. Is this a bottleneck problem?
I don't think it is. There's more and more people learning how to program and work with blockchains every single day. There's all sorts of now blockchain academies and blockchain programming schools where people can learn how to do all of these things. And we don't actually know the total number of people that own Bitcoins around the world, but we do know that number is increasing every single day, and the people that are using and holding and buying and selling cryptocurrencies is increasing around the world every single day. So even if that is a problem today, it's less of a problem tomorrow and even less of a problem the week after that.
Roger, for members of our audience who would want to get involved in this industry as an occupation, how would one go about showing their talents to the projects and getting hired?
I think the first step is just get involved with the community. I would advise them to go and get on some of these online discussion forums and start talking with other people and learning and educating yourself about it. And the best way to do that is to actually try using it. So go and get a cryptocurrency wallet. Of course, I'll recommend the Bitcoin.com wallet, but there's a bunch of other ones out there as well. And start using it, and send it forth, back and forth a little bit of it with a friend or a spouse or a family member. And work with it right there, watch it working right before your very eyes. And once you see how it works before your very eyes and you understand what's happening behind the scenes, it really is like magic internet money. And you'll realize that the entire world is now much more exciting for your place because of the existence of cryptocurrencies.
Yes, it is. Now, I know that you were one of the first people in the entire world to invest in Bitcoin startups, and you actually funded the first generation of Bitcoin businesses. Can you describe to us some of the different businesses that are out there that you've been involved with in the past?
Oh, yeah. So, of course, the most common ones would be blockchain.info, the number one cryptocurrency wallet in the entire world. It was originally being run by one guy in the UK, still living at home with his parents. He was running the entire website off of a Mac Mini in his mom's bedroom. And I contacted him and I said, I'm interested in Bitcoin. I want to do what I can to support Bitcoin. Do you need any funds to expand your operations? He said, I think we need to buy a real server and move it off of this Mac Mini. So I sent him, I'm pretty sure I sent him Bitcoin actually for it too. And then he bought the server, and then now a website with more than 20 million wallets has been born in the form of blockchain.info. Some other examples are BitPay, the very first merchant processor business for Bitcoin-related things and cryptocurrency transactions. Another example is Kraken, one of the most popular Bitcoin exchanges in the world. The list just goes on and on and on. And this was long before Silicon Valley and traditional venture capital firms were really paying any attention at all.
That is just amazing. So you actually funded entirely the first generation of these businesses. Now, do you remain in contact with them? Do you remain as part of their businesses themselves, or do you sort of step away as an investor? What is your role?
Well, I still talk to them often, and we talk about what's going on. And the big, giant concern at the moment is this artificial block size limit that's been imposed on top of Bitcoin Core. So all of these businesses that used to be Bitcoin-only businesses are now busy integrating as many altcoins as they can because they work better than Bitcoin Core. So we saw, for example, blockchain.info used to be only a Bitcoin wallet. Coinbase used to be only a Bitcoin wallet. BitPay used to be only a Bitcoin processor. Bitcoin.com used to only mention Bitcoin. Whereas now all these websites are having to integrate altcoins, the most prominent one of which is Bitcoin Cash. And we're seeing all these businesses being forced to do that because of this full block policy that's been imposed on top of Bitcoin Core and basically completely altering the roadmap for Bitcoin Core. But that's the world we live in, and as an investor, we have to deal with the world as it is, not with the world as we would like it to be. So as an investor, that's why I've sold most of my Bitcoin Core coins to buy more Bitcoin Cash, because I'm certain that the future of Bitcoin Core is not bright with the high fees and the long confirmation times for the transactions. Whereas with Bitcoin Cash, it's less than a penny and the transactions go right through right away. So when you're choosing what cryptocurrencies to invest in, look at the fundamentals. Is it useful and is it scarce? And if it's not useful and not scarce, then I wouldn't invest in it. And Bitcoin Cash, I think, has great characteristics on both of those fronts.
Roger, could you please describe the fundamentals of what a block is, and also the problem that's developed, this limitation that you're speaking of that everyone is very concerned about?
Sure. So we've all heard of a blockchain, and what a blockchain is it's basically a chain of blocks, and within each block are all the transactions that have happened on that blockchain since the previous block, and they're connected together mathematically, so you can see the exact order that they all came together in. And so on the Bitcoin network, the blocks are limited. On the Bitcoin Core network today, the blocks are limited to 1 megabyte on average every 10 minutes. And within that 1 megabyte, you can fit around 2,000 transactions. So the problem now is that more than 2,000 people are wanting to make a Bitcoin transaction every 10 minutes. And so the only way to solve that now is these people have to bid against each other for inclusion in that 1 megabyte of block space. Whereas Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, and all the people like myself that were involved in Bitcoin in the early days, we all looked at it and we all knew that, well, if the blocks ever started to become full because Bitcoin was such a success because so many people are using it, we would just increase the maximum block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes or 3 megabytes or 4 megabytes. And Satoshi even said the ultimate solution is just to allow the blocks to get as big as they need to be as people are using Bitcoin. And That's how Bitcoin always grew, because the blocks were never actually 1 megabyte until very recently. The blocks were 10 kilobytes, and 100 kilobytes, and 200 kilobytes, and on and on and up until they reached the 1 megabyte limit. Now, because of that, the fees are, tens or hundreds or even thousands of dollars for a single Bitcoin transaction. And the transactions, instead of always going through in the very next block, they take hours, days, weeks, or sometimes never. Sometimes they don't even go through at all. And that creates a huge problem for Bitcoin. And even right now, as we're on the call, there's more than 250,000 Bitcoin transactions waiting to be included in blocks. And those represent about 250,000 unhappy Bitcoin users that are having a bad experience with Bitcoin. Whereas with Bitcoin Cash, the blocks can be just as big as they need to be, so your transactions always go through right away, and the transactions cost less than a penny. So if you have two different versions of Bitcoin, one that's fast, cheap, and reliable, and the other is slow, expensive, and unreliable, you can decide for you which one of those two is more useful and which one you think is going to have more adoption around the world and more people using it. And it's adoption and use in business that leads to a higher market cap, which leads to a higher price per coin. So if you just want to invest as an investor, I think Bitcoin Cash is going to far outperform Bitcoin Core. And to be fair to Bitcoin Core side of the argument, they argue that rather than increasing the block size, we should just try and figure out how to fit more transactions inside of each 1 megabyte block. And maybe they'll be successful with that, but none of those technologies are ready yet. And instead, the entire network is grinding to a screeching halt with the fees skyrocketing and the user experience being horrible. So as a businessman and someone who ran my own successful tech company in Silicon Valley for about 15 years before I got involved in Bitcoin, employing dozens of people with customers all over the world, if you have a product that's working well, don't break it. And that's exactly what happened with Bitcoin Core. We had something that was working amazingly well, and these Bitcoin Core developers have intentionally broken it. And the customers are looking for something else at this point. And the one that's at the top of their list is Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum's not far behind that as well.
That is very interesting. I was just going to ask what actually happened to recently change the situation where the blocks were not allowed to increase in size. But I think you just answered that question. Could you go a little bit further into that, of when this happened and who made this decision?
Yeah, so in the early days of Bitcoin, some people got together and convinced Satoshi that it might be a good idea to put a 1 megabyte limit to prevent people from spamming the network. And at the time this 1 megabyte limit was put into place, the blocks were somewhere in the range of 1 kilobyte. So that means this limit was 1,000 times bigger than what the biggest block had been around that time. And so if we were to do the same, difference in the limit today, that means that we would have, the blocks being 1,000 megabytes today, 1 gigabyte. The blocks would never be 1 gigabyte. In reality, if the blocks had been allowed to grow, maybe the blocks would be 2 megabytes today. This is it's almost the year 2018. 2 megabytes worth of data every 10 minutes is not hard to handle at all. In fact, just about every single web page you go to on your computer is going to be more than 2 megabytes. If you watch a YouTube video, you're looking at dozens, if not hundreds of megabytes for every single video you watch on YouTube. So 2 megabytes per 10 minutes is not any sort of issue at all. So Bitcoin, it doesn't have a technical scaling problem. It just has a social scaling problem. And so these core developers lobbied all sorts of people and tried to convince them that we need to keep the block size at 1 megabyte. And a lot of the miners were kind of indifferent or didn't have an opinion or didn't realize the problem until it was too late. And then on August 1st, the two different ideological camps split their separate ways. The Bitcoin Core team managed to drag most of the infrastructure along with them. But the Bitcoin Cash team brought most of the early adopters of Bitcoin and most of the people that ideologically understood Bitcoin and brought the same economic formula that made Bitcoin a success in the first place. So I don't think it'll take too much longer before Bitcoin Cash has surpassed Bitcoin Core in terms of market adoption and usage and popularity around the world. It won't happen overnight, but it's going to happen.
Wow. Now, I know you love Bitcoin Cash, but what are your top 3 currency picks for 2018, the ones that are relatively unknown and could potentially make massive progress?
So I've been so incredibly busy as the CEO of Bitcoin.com that unfortunately I haven't had as much time as I would like to invest and research these other lesser-known currencies. But I'll tell you some of the ones that I hold in my own portfolio. Of course, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Monero, Zcash, Zcoin, Zencash, Dash, and probably a couple of others that are slipping my mind at the moment. But I'm a really big fan of the different privacy coins, and that's one of the parts that was also frustrating for me about this Bitcoin Core versus Bitcoin Cash scaling debate, is that in addition to making the fees or the Bitcoin transactions on Bitcoin Core slow, expensive, and unreliable, they really undermine the privacy or the fungibility of Bitcoin Core. And so I'm looking for some of these tools to come and help make Bitcoin Cash more fungible again, which are now available because the blocks aren't full. So I diversified. I'm most bullish on privacy coins, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So look for coins that add additional privacy, and I think those are probably ones that are worth paying attention to.
Roger, could you please describe to our audience what exactly Bitcoin.com is and what it does?
Bitcoin.com is a fantastic place for anybody who's new to the world of cryptocurrencies to get started and start learning about them. You can get a free Bitcoin wallet that supports both Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash. You can buy Bitcoin with a credit card. You can do all sorts of things. We have a forum where you can talk to other people. We have a news team of people around the world that are posting all the latest news happening in the crypto coin ecosystem every single day. So it's basically a fantastic place for everything that you would want to know or learn or do in regards to cryptocurrency. So and it's definitely an easy domain to remember as well with Bitcoin.com.
Roger, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Roger Ver, cryptocurrency expert, investor, and CEO of Bitcoin.com. For the Industry Experts Panel, I'm Michelle Holliday at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com. Truly a bombshell interview for us today. Roger Ver has been one of the most vocal proponents of Bitcoin ever since its inception. Now, he is a key person behind the hard fork, which created Bitcoin Cash. At Portfolio Wealth Global, we featured this hard fork and suggested people get in below $500 per token. Today, the price is well over $2,200. We have received countless thank you emails, especially after Tom Beck profiled Dash at the ridiculously low price of $30. Dash has now recently surged to above $1,100. Our two most recent winners have been the relatively unknown Stratus, up 70% since mid-December, and Ripple. Get the complete information at portfoliowealthglobal.com/2018. Roger has done incredibly well as one of the early Bitcoin investors, buying at levels which will never return. So he has turned his attention to investing in businesses that operate the blockchain and hashgraph. Tom Beck, founder of Portfolio Wealth Global, has been to 4 continents in the past 3 months, attending conferences on cryptocurrencies. And we are about to publish the new companies that Portfolio Wealth Global will cover throughout 2018. After our debut blockchain stock suggestion surged 900% in 3 months, and our subscribers made a killing on their positions, we are ready to kickstart 2018 with a blowout January. Roger has been extremely successful with his philosophy on how cryptocurrencies will become a favorite means of exchange globally. He has a long-term view of the industry and its ability to solve problems, since it is open source and is a collective of millions of minds worldwide. Bitcoin Core's scaling problems are actually opening the door to many altcoins and businesses. New solutions will be found in 2018. As Portfolio Wealth Global sees it, the time is now. Go to portfoliowealthglobal.com/rocket. Tom Beck and the team see 2018 as a massive opportunity to be the first in the door with profitable new ventures in this sector. Thanks for joining us today. For the Industry Experts Panel, I'm Michelle Holliday at PortfolioWealthGlobal.com.